abs are prepared to defend themselves against the birds and children which seek to terrorize them. As beings guarded not only with a hard outer shell, but painful pincers, I think they serve a wonderful example for our own guard. Notice how well their arms are designed to fit with their body, but also how easily they can project them forward. Similarly, our guard should serve the same purpose, acting as our own cage of protection, intermediating our punches and strikes. Let's get to it. Glad to see that working. Charya! Kengen. Caging or covering yourself is a natural response when something threatens to strike you. Your arms take the blow so that your face and vitals don't have to. The guard goes beyond this, however, because it sets the loading position for your blocks and strikes. This dual purpose makes the placement of our guard an important consideration. There are many different styles of guard. In Taekwondo sparring, you may see some competitors with a low guard. To apply this same type of guard to boxing would leave you an easy target for a knockout. The rules of the game tend to dictate the optimal positioning of our upper limbs. Today, we'll be focusing on the traditional guard in terms of the idealized technique. We'll cover two different ways to form the guard, and we'll also take a look at the loaded position, another starting point for many of our techniques. Finally, we'll wrap things up with a review of stances from last week, adding in what we learned today. To begin, the guard itself. As a technique unique to mostly sparring stance, I will have a lead and a reverse hand. My reverse hand will always be chin to cheek, protecting the back half of my body while also giving me a powerful reverse punch. From the opposite side of my chin, my lead hand travels slightly forward, approaching 90 degrees, but not quite reaching it. My fist should be in line with my shoulder or slightly above it. This gives me a barrier away from my body while also optimizing my ability to throw a lead hand punch. The most common mistake in guard is to allow your elbows to flare. This not only leaves you open for a perfect kick right to the ribs, but in forms, it's also pretty noticeable. Not to mention, it just looks weird punching like that. There are two different loading positions for this technique, defining which type of guard it is to be called. Scissor guard and drag guard. Both are designed for different scenarios in which establishing guard is the priority. First, the scissor guard. Hearing that music, seeing her do her thing, doesn't that just make you feel inspired? Now we're going to take that X that she was forming there and slightly modify it. Instead of having both palms facing towards us, we're going to turn our outer palm away from us. Then we're going to let both arms slide against each other until they find their proper placement. This will be the most common way to find guard, and also gives us a miniature guard for quick protection before forming our full guard. Therefore, whenever facing the same direction and first forming our guard, the scissor guard will likely be the one that we use. And don't forget to channel some of that Wonder Woman energy. The second way to find a guard is known as drag guard. In this scenario, we already have our guard established in one direction, but we need to quickly find it in another direction. To do this, we simply drag our guard from one target to another. Notice that as I do this, my guard is changing sides, so that what was once my lead hand is becoming my reverse hand and vice versa. This most commonly occurs after kicking, when you land facing the new direction. Now that we've seen both types of guard, let's practice. You'll notice that I've been doing most techniques on my left side, and that's not because I'm left-handed, but because I'm mirroring. So when I say step to your right side, I'll actually be moving my left side. This is only to help you learn. Starting from feet together, notice that when I make the X, my shoulders are square with the target. As I step back, my shoulder alignment changes, and the scissor is made. Let's do that a couple times. Feet together, X, step, shoulders, scissor, guard. Feet together, X, step, shoulder, scissor, guard. Feet together, X, step, shoulder, scissors, guard. Let's do that 3 times on the other side. Opposite hand loads in front. Feet together, X, step, shoulder, scissor, guard. Take out this watch because that's getting a little annoying running into that every time. Feet together, X, step, shoulder, scissor, guard. Last one. Feet together, X, step, shoulder, scissor, guard. For drag guard, we'll use our middle stance to give our legs a little conditioning. Start with your guard set to the right, head turns to the left, drag the guard across. Turn, drag. 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 Finally, loaded position. While not a guard, it is the most common positioning of our hands in forms. With our arms pulled tight back to our side, we create ample potential energy for our future strikes. In this style, we focus on a high loaded position with our elbows pulled fully back. The loaded position seems to fly in the face of having a guard in the first place. But I have heard one satisfactory answer for its practicality. Imagine that you are striking outward with one hand, that you are pulling your target towards you with the other hand, bringing its weight along with your outward strike to increase the final force of the impact. Satisfactory, but I would say we really use loaded position just because it's more fun. Okay, starting to get a little dark out. Now, let's practice what we've learned so far. Both our stances and our guard and loaded position. For middle, front, and back stance, we'll use our loaded position. For sparring stance, we'll use our guard. You can use tracks on the ground like I used last episode, but don't worry about landing on them every time. For now, just focus on maintaining your balance and not falling over. As you progress, think about the little details. Foot, hip alignment, projecting the knee towards the center toe, posture. Eventually, you want to be able to do these stances without thinking. Then, go on to add all we learned today with your upper body. Here we go. I'll be mirroring you today. Start with loaded position, stepping to your right, middle stance. Stepping forward, front stance. Back stance. Sparring stance. Let's find that middle stance again. Front stance. Back stance. Sparring stance. One more time. Middle stance. Front stance. Back stance. Sparring stance. Okay, now let's have some fun. Sparring stance. Middle stance. Front stance. Front stance. Back stance. Sparring stance. Sparring stance. Middle stance. Front stance. Back stance. Sparring stance. Middle stance. Guard. Turn. Guard. Turn. Guard. Front stance. Back stance. Front stance. Back stance. Middle stance. Sparring stance. Sparring stance. Sparring stance. Front stance. Front stance. Back stance. Sparring stance. Front stance. Back stance. Sparring stance. Sparring stance. Front stance. Front stance. Sparring stance. Sparring stance. Sparring stance. Slowly, we are building the foundation from which all future techniques will come. What started with finding our balance in our stances, we continue today with preparing for our future techniques in guard. Next week, we'll be taking a look at our first offensive technique, one that is common to almost all martial arts. We'll be taking a look at the punch. Interestingly, finding balance in my life requires preparedness. I find it easier to plan balance into my days than trying to find it in the moment. Granted, I'm not well gifted in spontaneity, or at least not well practiced. And maybe for that reason, to find balance in my life, I need to let go of some of that planning, at least sometimes and in small ways. Thank you for joining me today. Have a great week.